Hello there.
Hello there. Welcome back to the Sky Guys podcast. Fun week here. Hope you had a good 4th of July weekend. We are back here. Take a trip in the Wayback Machine a little bit to look back at the making of Star Wars. A look at the new 2004 documentary Empire of Dreams covers the making of the original trilogy. I'm your host, Mike Phillips. With you here as always, the voice here in the narration every single week. Pete Consadori is here. Pete, how are you?
Doing well. I'm excited to talk about this. It was a very nice watch. If you like documentaries, I would highly recommend it. But we'll talk about it more. Thanks for having.
Yeah, Docs and Star Wars, a good mix for the fans of this
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah, no, this was a good one.
Yep. Also here with us today, the man who was originally voicing Darth Vader before he got replaced by James Earl Jones. Nick Fraietta is here. Nick, how are you?
Doing great. Funny story is I didn't realize until we was watching this that I've already seen this documentary.
Oh, so it's a refresher for you.
Yeah, I watched, I don't remember how long ago, but I definitely watched it. I don't know if I finished it, but a lot of it was ringing bells the whole time.
Yeah, I remember I watched this initially, I think back in like maybe like 2013. I watched it. It's been like about like a decade plus since I've seen it last. So it's nice. Some stuff was coming back to me. Like it was cool to revisit some things I've forgotten. So definitely a fun watch. Talk about that in a minute here. But Pete wants to subscribe to the podcast. They can do so Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Amazon, all usual suspects. Simply search for the Sky Guys here at podcast platforms and episodes there. And we have a fun summer coming up here. Got a couple of fun offbeat ideas. Bracket season's coming up at the end of the month. Make sure you're subscribed.
Bracket season is upon us for the Sky Guys. That's going to be good. Make sure you're subscribed. It's totally free. We say it every week. And yeah, like Mike said, a lot of fun stuff in the pipeline. That's a little bit different than we usually do. So definitely subscribe.
Nick, people want to follow us on social media. How can I do that?
Fellow at Sky Guys Podcast all over social media, or you can email the pod at skyguyspod@gmail.com.
Yep, and we can also follow. Let's also go to social media. Our social media comment of the week here. We're going to go to TikTok here, and we have a pretty long comment here. When Pete and I talked about the potential of a second season of The Acolyte, I think a couple weeks back. This comment is from Michael Downs 47, and we talk about the second season of The Acolyte thing here. This is the problem with the current state of Star Wars, the stuff everybody wants to bring back, no one understand it. Having a really this discussion in this video about who are the Knights of Ren and what is their role. This is where Star Wars started to go massively downhill. Was actually with the prequel. You have to have TV shows, comic books, and all this stuff to get a better appreciation, understanding of the movies, and the movies can't stand alone on their own. Star Wars is failing as a movie franchise, universally what it is. The problem with the Acolyte, in my opinion, is there was whatever 68 episodes trying to justify and get to the end and say, look, we did something cool, instead of actually telling a story. The truth of the matter is there's so much going on in this 6 to 8 episode show that could have been 6 seasons, looked at different aspects of it. Have you taken on more of a true detective style, telling stories you commit to a narrative about certain people for one season? It's actually could have been a decent show. Would have been flushed out, had any depth into the story of the Covenant and raising the girls in that environment. You could have made an interesting season about them. I take a season developed the four Jedi that show up again. You would have had an investment in it. If you would have spent a season during the times the Jedi showed up and developed it out, would have been a great thing and so forth. You see how they actually want to build in to get to where you want to. It's a 5 to 7 season series. Probably didn't care about telling those great stories. Just wanted to get to those points to prove a point. So, long story short, too much content, too much ancillary material, too many different things trying to go on at once with this show in terms of why it failed. So, Nick, what do you think?
I agree, and I also agree with his first original point. This is how Star Wars kind of failed as a movie franchise, even dating back to the prequels, where they made it so it was more than movies and needed home. Like essentially, what he's saying is,
The homework
when you
problem.
need homework to understand it, it becomes an issue. I
Correct.
agree.
Yeah, and Pete, I appreciate the depth that Michael Downs took to address this comment here and like going to many different points here. I do think like he has a valid point here. Like I did feel like with Acolyte, we somehow did too much and too little at the same time.
Yeah, it's a weird dichotomy because it like you said, too much too little is probably a great way to say it. I think that I disagree that you plan this show to be 5 to 7 seasons. However, I agree that it should have been 5 to 7 seasons, and you, like you said, just make sure the storyline is fully developed versus just throwing 10 pounds of stuff in a 1 pound bag. So, and we talked about the Acolyte too. I think that you kind of have to try to plan like you're only going to have one season and hope it gets to 5 to 7 versus having a plan for it. So it's like you said, it's kind of like a little bit of column A, column B, right? It's too much and too little at the same time.
Yeah, and are you guys familiar with the True Detective world?
No.
True Detective basically is an anthology show on HBO, like where every season it's like a self-contained like detective story where like you have like two characters in their world and they solve a case. You learn about their world. You do tell a complete story in 10 episodes, and then the next season it's new characters, same sort of model. So like they tell you the one complete story and move on. So like that's sort of like what this guy's trying to get at.
Well, before I watched Stranger Things, that's what I thought Stranger Things was, but that's not what Stranger Things is. Just
Nope.
fun fact.
All right,
That's
so
all.
let's get to the Star Wars news. Not a lot's happened over the holiday break, but we'll try and catch you up.
Yeah, so there was a
I,
ninth Jedi trailer, and we're supposed to react to it, and I didn't watch it.
I'm sure Pete did not.
I would have watched
Pete,
it. I did not know.
My reaction is I didn't know.
yeah, and
I
Pete
read
also,
that and went, "Oh, reaction. Oh, I thought to react." Yeah, I didn't watch it, so that's my
yeah.
reaction. I will watch it though.
To be fair to Pete, Pete also lost power in the crazy storms we had in the Northeast here over the weekend for a little bit. We're lucky we got Pete on the podcast this week.
It was on my radar. It's bad. Like I feel bad because I don't want to make it seem like I don't care about this project, but like this is like at the bottom of my list when it comes to like piquing interest. Not to say it's going to be bad or anything like that. But I was just like, okay.
I,
Trailer came out. Like I'm not like rushing to see it. You know.
How was it, Mike? How
I
was it?
did I did watch the trailer and I came away more interested than I was before, which is good.
Yeah, I'm gonna give
Okay.
it a watch, and I plan to
Yeah,
definitely rewatch those episodes or episode from
yeah.
the Vision series.
Yeah, it's 8 episodes to be clear. It's coming out all at once August 5th on Disney Plus and Hulu. We're going to get to it after bracket season. We have yet to decide if we're going to do 1 or 2 episodes, but I'll let you guys know here. Recovery Room Nick has volunteered to come along for the ride with us for the Ninth Jedi.
It'll be fun. I'm excited to watch it. Again, I got to rewatch those original episodes though.
Yeah, Recovery Room Nick joined us with season 3 of the Visions, where we got the second part of this. So like definitely this is his alley. So I think it's good to have a pro anime guy on the pod when we cover that.
Yes, yes, excited.
All right, what else we got?
Pedro Pascal weighed in on what could be next for The Mandalorian after The Mandalorian and Grogu, telling CBR, "I see a next chapter. I hope for a next chapter. There isn't really enough we can get out of The Mandalorian and Grogu, especially as a duo. Along with that, the world that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have built within this specific timeline has so much opportunity for Star Wars."
Yeah. I'm good with Pedro. I think like I think Pete, we are in agreement. We will see these characters again. We don't know the exact forum yet, but like I think there is more to the Mandalorian and Grogu story we will get.
I agree. I feel like we're kind of in the middle for the beginning, middle, and end. I think seasons 1 and 2 were the middle, were the beginning. Season 3 and Mando and Grogu are in the middle, and I feel like we need to start placing some pieces to get to an end game. And I think that's probably coming. I don't think Mando and Grogu are done. I think this is one of their biggest properties right now, so I think they're going to continue with it.
Yeah, to build on your point here, are either you guys like 24 watchers? Did you watch that show back in the day?
No.
Nope.
All right, so sort of sum up this way. I think this is kind of what you were going at here. Like 24, the first 3 seasons are kind of like tied together, their own contained storyline. And then we move forward, I think, with Jack Bauer in season 4. Have a bunch of new characters. Some of the old ones filter in, but like we kind of did a whole new arc with Jack at that point. So I wonder if we're getting to, okay, we'll wrap, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, wrap up Mando's main storyline here, then new time period, Mando and Grogu were on new adventures. I think we could be heading that direction.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else in the news bar? Or is that it?
That is it.
All right. Let's get to the Empire of Dreams documentary. This came out in 2004. It's about 2.5 hours on Disney Plus. Directed, I believe, by Kevin Burns is the director of this documentary, and covers a lot of the making of the original trilogy as well as George's career up to that point here. I think if Pete, my thing is here, like if you are a Star Wars fan and you like are invested, especially in that original trilogy, I think you should give this a watch because I think you learn a lot of fun things. You have all of the original cast in the doc. You have the main three. You have Anthony Daniels. You have James Earl Jones. You have Billy D. You have George in a doc, which almost never happens these days. George almost never talks about the franchise anymore. So I think a very valuable watch. You want to learn more about this franchise.
Yeah, and to let the viewers know, if you've never seen this, this is very much a how to make a movie documentary, not like more Star Wars information when it comes to the lore or canon or anything like that. I think that you do get some snippets of that. I think that George and the rest of the cast and crew really give a lot of insights as to how these movies were made, what kind of pressures the movies were under when it came to production, post-production, audience screening, stuff like that. So don't go into it thinking you're getting backstory about a character or anything like that. You're going into this trying to learn more about how these movies were created, what went into it technically, money wise, behind the scenes wise. It's still very interesting to watch.
Yeah, Nick, I'll add here, it's not like this, it's not like the modern Disney Plus documentaries. Like, okay, like here's season one of The Mandalorian. Here's what you need to know about like The Mandalorian and like what we did in season one. This is very much like, hey guys, like here's how this one of the most iconic movies of all time was made and how very close it came to not actually make it across the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned a lot too. There was a lot that I didn't. Again, I did watch this in the past, but I forgot a lot of the stuff. So I learned a lot watching this doc. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know. Like, and some of the stuff that I learned could have just been standard movie practice in terms of like the order of things and how they were done. But for me, this was a great watch. It was something that I got to learn a lot about. To be honest with you, I was really, really, really interested in the first half, which is when they were talking about A New Hope. Once they were moved into Empire Return of the Jedi, I didn't really care because that was kind of standard practice on how to make a sequel. There wasn't really. I like going through the concept arts, some of like the original character designs, the voices, and how that stuff came to be introduced. Like going on with the sequel was just kind of more of the same, and just more about like budgeting and timing, more so than like actually making his vision come to life, which to me was the most interesting part.
Yeah. To be fair, we spend, I'd say, of the 2.5 hours, I think going through the making of A New Hope thing takes about like an hour 40 into the movie. Then the rest, like out like 45 minutes, is basically Jedi and Empire. And but like, obviously very important because without the whole chaos of trying to make A New Hope and all the stuff going on with the casting and like the craziness with the budget and the ILM having to basically invent special effects on the fly as they were making the movie, like without all of that, like you're not getting Empire or Jedi.
Yep.
All right, so let's kind of go around here. So let's take some turns here. Like Pete, give me something interesting you saw in the doc you want to discuss.
Um, I always knew that the creation of Star Wars really led a lot of new projects to be made after it. I didn't realize that one of his companies actually created Pixar.
Yeah,
As a Disney fan or, growing up watching Toy Story and Pixar movies, I didn't realize that his company created the computer that later turned into how they animated movies and it was sold and became Pixar Animation Studio because that was the name of the computer. So I thought that was pretty cool. Not to take away from the stuff I learned about the Star Wars movies in general, just how that really was a Star Wars in general was really a pioneer, and George was a pioneer to a lot of the movies that we watch today.
he absolutely was here. Definitely the Pixar thing was a fun fact, and like ILM, another like there's like another documentary we're not gonna cover on here, but I'll tell you guys you like that stuff. Like Light and Magic on Disney Plus, it covers like the history of ILM and some of the stuff they've done in the field of special effects. Like a lot of great stuff in that doc if you want to check that out.
I've seen that one as well. I don't remember it, but I have seen that one. To me, what stuck out the most was, and again, I don't know if this is standard, but just the order that things were done in, to
Yeah.
me was like, I didn't know that. Like, I kind of just like the casting came way later on in the process than I thought it did. The composition, the score that John Williams put was like last. I had no idea. Like this stuff to me was just like, oh yeah, Harrison Ford is Han Solo. I thought he always was. I didn't realize that he wasn't even considered for the role originally and was supposed to be like a helper, if you will. So that stuff was all news to me, and that's what made it really interesting. And then there were things that I just figured that I didn't know off the top of my head, but I figured that there was a lot of problems with production studios being like, we don't want this because they didn't trust it. And I didn't know that, but that just makes sense. It's like you knew that this was a risky project at the time.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought the audition things up because it's pretty cool because like you do get like footage of like especially Hamill and Harrison Ford like reading for their roles. I think that's pretty cool to see that stuff behind the scenes. And it's crazy when you think about like how like the characters evolved from the initial drafts that Lucas made. And talk about how like initially like Luke was supposed to be like a 60-year-old general in this thing. I think they kind of transferred that to Obi-Wan, and then Harrison Ford was a green skin alien, like Han Solo and a green skin alien original draft four that kind of turned that into Greedo and made Han like his own character. Like there was a lot of like parts moving around here before we landed on the characters we landed on.
Yeah, and a lot of different people that I didn't know were auditioning. Not that I knew most of those names, to be honest. I didn't. They're from this, 50 years ago. But very interesting stuff by Carrie Fisher too, with the weight loss stuff. I found that crazy. I didn't know. That sounds ridiculous to me that that was true. But um, so I guess it was a different world back then, right?
Yeah, it was 1975, 76 when they were making this. And like
Yeah.
back then, a lot of perception, like, okay, like, like you weigh too much. We'll just bring in like the next like blonde, like brunette, like woman who like fit is a similar archetype as you to play that role, who is the right body size for us.
Yep.
Yeah. I also think like it's crazy, Pete, the production of this movie, especially like we get a lot about how like George is basically fighting with Fox at the time about like, okay, I want to do this. Can we do this? Like, I'll put this up. Can you do this up? And one of the crazy things we've heard about this, but it really goes into detail here, is like George has the foresight to say, hey, like I'll take a pay cut on the distribution, but like I get all the merchandise rights. And like there's something here that like basically we heard about how the crazy the toy demand was. We saw like how they basically set out the cardboard box for Christmas because Karen didn't have enough figures ready. Like, okay, here's the box, and you'll get the toys in like March instead of a Christmas present. Like, it's crazy how much like the merch basically was what made him a fortune off these movies.
I mean, he also had the first script he wrote was the story of all three movies.
Yep.
It was a concise piece, and he said, "Let's split up the acts."
Yep.
And I find that very interesting, considering we've seen trilogies, the sequel trilogy, not be cohesive, right? And it just seems very disjointed, and it seems like George had the foresight for a lot of different things, right? To your point, he had the foresight of having a trilogy movie because the script was getting long. And he even said, I want the rights not only to the merchandising, but the sequel rights. I don't want you to have the sequel rights. I want the sequel rights. I want to make them, which I think was really smart to do. Um, and yeah, I mean, like the short-term pay cut for the long-term payout of the merchandise was huge. I don't think anyone, I mean, they even said, I don't think anyone knew this was going to be that big. I mean, I think George just was doing something he was passionate about and he wanted to do it. And he was able to get one of the executives or one of the people who worked at Fox to just give him pretty much carte blanche and say, listen, here's the money, just do what you got to do. And it worked. I mean, obviously, it worked out really well. We're doing a podcast about Star Wars, right? So it was very smart decisions that were made by George in the beginning.
Yeah, and
And to
George.
me, the big thing was like it was. I think when he originally said like, I want, I don't need more money, whatever. I just want this. They were like, what is this guy, an idiot? Like, because the merch, correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm right here. Merchandising was a thing. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like a thing until Star Wars. Like in movies, it wasn't. It was never a big deal. And this completely changed the game in terms of tie-in merchandise and stuff like that, toys and lunch boxes and whatever it may be. They didn't really have a big blockbuster series prior to this. I'm sure there were some, like, but nothing really come close to what they did with this.
Yeah, it's definitely a big deal here. And it's crazy how like far ahead George is looking compared to like the executives at the time for Fox who finds it, especially like when they're getting to the end of production and like George is like, hey, like we like if they Fox these big deal like, oh, like we want it done by this date. And George's like, we never got to increase our budget more to get it done by this date and have multiple crews filming simultaneous things. Like they're like, we don't care, they don't care about that. They just want it done by this date. So like it's crazy like how like more he understood the movie making process than the people greenlighting the movie did.
Yeah, you're right. He pretty much predicted the future.
Yeah, he did. It's crazy here. In terms of some other stuff that came out of this doc here, I think it's interesting here. I think like the casting choices were definitely fun here. And I think one of the treats of this thing is like you get the footage you get of like David Prowse's voice on set and like how hard it was for them to find the right voice for Darth Vader. And you listen to some of the footage from A New Hope of David Prowse on set doing the lines. It just sounds so wrong. And then you hear, I think, a couple of the executives involved production with this, and they're like, "What our Darth Vader's gonna be like an old Scottish man? Like that doesn't seem very like menacing." And then like it took them a while to land on James Earl Jones.
If this part wasn't news to me, I knew this. I've seen the clips of these voices before. I knew that they changed it and pretty much had to change it, but still really interesting to see that. I guess that they knew that, like the production team knew that, listening to it and watching it and being a part of it.
Yeah, I did like that. So Pete, like you seen this before? You seen the David Prowse clips of him voicing the lines?
I have, and I always found it really funny. Oh, thank God George made the decision to get James Earl Jones, because if that would have been the case, he wouldn't have been as menacing. It would have been just kind of comical.
Yeah, it would have been like a guy who came out of a Scottish bar, like being your main villain in the franchise.
Right.
Yeah, that was
Groundskeeper Willie.
groundskeeper Willie indeed, and it's crazy also like how crazy they took effects here, like in terms of like deliveries they had to take because there were issues of budget. Like I forgot that this had happened. That like apparently both Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher talked about how like they didn't have the budget for stunt doubles that late the production. So like the scene in New Hope when they're swinging over the chasm on the Death Star bridge that was them doing it. They did not have a stunt double. This, and they're like, yeah, and you have the stunt corner. It's like, oh, I went over. The line was kind of ripping, but like I said, guys, it's fine. And they got over once and never shot it again.
I mean, there's a bunch of things that you can tell. Like Stormtrooper hits his head on the door. That wasn't in the doc, though, was it?
No, they kind of went over that a little bit at the end when George talked about how the special editions, how now the tech caught up to like what he actually wanted to be.
There were little things in there that you could just tell was a low budget. I mean, to say low budget, but you see my point.
Yeah.
Not really low, but just like I guess time constraints is what I'm trying to say. Like the things that they had to do. Like you said, they were in the stunt doubles. They had to do that scene. They had to let the stormtrooper's head hit the door. Maybe they just thought it was funny. I don't know, but
I think it was just
interesting.
it's one of those things that Pete to that point earlier about like Fox saying, okay, you have to be rapid production by this date, so they couldn't have gone back and fixed it if they wanted to. And it's like one of the things I know, like one of the infamous like errors in the original cut of the movie before George corrects it is like I think at the end, like after they blow up the Death Star and they land back on the Yavin, like Mark Hamill comes out of the X-wing and screams Carrie instead of Leia because he says the actress's name instead of the character's name. They have to leave it in because they didn't have time to reshoot it.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Do they fix that in the special edition?
they do.
Yeah, I was about to say, because I think I've only seen the special edition. I don't think I saw the original.
Yeah, because I was old enough, I saw the VHS tapes, and that was one of the things that popped
Yeah.
out. He's like, Carrie! I'm like, that's not Carrie.
Yeah.
I like vividly remember that too.
Yeah, I remember that one. I remember the stormtrooper hitting his head on the door. Those are the two like big goof ups I remember from the tape edition here. And I do think also like anything pop for you. I think one of the things I want to discuss here is like the whole Vader reveal thing, which P has famously said in this podcast he can write better than George did. So we'll kind of go over that here, but I think they do. I think it was cool seeing like the dialogue here where they kept this so secret that they gave out fake scripts. They had David Prowse read different lines on the set. Where I think Prowse, correct me if I'm wrong, P says, oh, he tells Mark Hamill Obi-Wan killed your father or something to that effect, and Mark has to react because they tell him, oh, this is what he's really saying. You need to react that way, and very clever way to keep that secret as small as possible, and I think a very interesting look back at one of the most iconic scenes in the movie franchise history.
It was probably the first time that's ever been done. Yeah, like I feel like most of the time movies back then, like there was no secrets to the actors. Like everyone knew what was going on. Kind of paved the way of like really just keeping everything under lock and key. Even with the Marvel stuff you hear about nowadays, like actors didn't know what was happening, didn't know what the ending was. They go and shoot their scenes and then they go home, kind of thing. So, um, I think it was smart by George to do that. And for the record, um, I can't write movies. I don't think I could write it better. I think I was joking around at that. You guys won't let me let it down.
Well, it is an iconic line in the history of this podcast.
It is iconic. It is iconic. But I think keeping it under wraps was good because it doesn't get leaked anywhere, right? Only a few people knew it. So
It's
Nick,
just
what?
crazy that we talk about this because nowadays we say, yeah, don't tell Tom Holland because he's going to ruin it, right?
Yep.
Because of what happened. But 50 years ago, that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
What do you mean spoiler? They don't even know what that word means. Spoiler or
Leak,
the word
leak,
we just used, like
leak it.
yeah, leak. Like that didn't exist. So like it's like George was living 30 years in the future when he made this movie. So like honestly, looking back, the things that he did, it's no surprise the franchise ended up being what it became because of how it looked. Like I said, it looked like he was living in 2005 and everybody else was living in, I guess when they were making it, it was like what, 74, 75.
Yep,
So yeah, he was living 30 years ahead.
he was. And any other cool tidbits you want to talk about from like Empire or Jedi here? Because I have one more if you guys have anything.
I don't have anything on those movies, honestly.
I think the thing was that also popped besides the Empire, the Vader thing was how hard they had to work to get Yoda right because they make up a point that like this is our sequel movie. Our wise Jedi that we're supposed to be going to as our next teacher after we lose Alec Guinness is a Muppet. And we have to, make the Muppet like have to build the stage 5 feet above the ground so that we can have Frank Oz puppeting the Muppet. Mark Hamill's like often the only human on the set on the call sheet for weeks when they're doing those sequences. And like we saw the concept art of him being blue initially, which I think we talked about in a previous pod. Nice to see that in the concept art, but crazy to think here, like, and they made a big deal about this, like how Yoda, I think they kind of made his face off the Frank Oz's actual face when they did this, which was funny. But I do think like how crazy it is that this franchise, the biggest characters of the sequel, came down to we have to get the audience to trust the Muppet.
Oh yeah, and the idea of putting the Einstein wrinkles on it was pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Pete, what do you think about the Yoda stuff?
I think what's more important is Mark Hamill's performance, and they talk about that too. If Mark Hamill didn't perform like Yoda was actually there and not a puppet, I think it would have made it so much more hard to believe. So, I mean, kudos to the puppeteers that were working with the puppet, underground, can barely hear the cues, or under set, I should say, not underground, under the set, barely hear the cues and doing something that people can't do with their own, faces and act and stuff like that. The reason, excuse me, the ability to be able to do that is quite impressive. But for Mark Hamill to act in that way, which I'm sure there was movies prior where like maybe acting with a puppet was a thing. I don't know of any, but I mean, he might have also been a pioneer in the sense of like who else was doing that, right? Like he was very, very much talking to no one, in a sense. So his performance, I think, is what made it 10 times better than just the puppeteer.
Yeah, and I know they said, and Mark Hamill's like, yeah, like the guy's under the stage saying the line. I can't hear what he's saying. So I'm kind of just like going off of like somebody's like, oh, like this is what he's saying. And like you have to do this. So like a lot of work to make sure you get that right. And like it's a good point that Pete makes, Nick, that like if Mark Hamill doesn't take the puppet seriously, we as the audience don't.
100%. Yeah, they did a fantastic job with that. I again didn't know that. There's a bunch of stuff that I learned in this pod, or excuse me, in this doc. Another thing I learned was I had no idea there was such a problem with the C-3PO voice.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at all. That was completely news to me. Like, and the fact that they didn't recast either. Like, it was just a different voice using the same voice actor, Anthony Daniels, that we all love.
Yeah. It's one, yeah, it shows you the range that he had at that point where he's like, okay, like, like this voice, I'll do this voice. And then that just worked out for him. Cause like, I think it was one of those things where so far in production, like, okay, we wasted a lot of time trying to find the right Darth Vader voice. Like, we don't have the kind of time to go redo C3PO.
Yeah, it's just very, very interesting stuff that I had no idea.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the Jedi stuff, we kind of like, I think we knew most of this, you would say. Like, the Harrison Ford wanting his character killed off was not news to anybody.
Right. Yeah, we knew that.
I don't think it was interesting, Pete, was like the Tom Fool where they had to go to with the rimming of the Blue Harvest title because like apparently everybody's trying to jack up the prices on them for production because of how successful the franchise was. They made up this fake title with this fake movie, and then one said, "Oh, Mark and Carrie and Harrison are here." I guess it's not about like this random line of life journey.
It makes sense. You go to a venue, it's a regular dinner party, it's one price. If it's a wedding, it's a bigger price, right? I mean, I think this is something that you don't think about, but it's something as successful as Star Wars, they think, yeah, we can charge them whatever we want. It's super successful, they're going to pay it. So, um, it was definitely interesting to see that. And again, like you watch this documentary, you're going to see a bunch of that stuff. I mean, it's all behind the scenes, the money end of it, the how they had to do it. So I think it was definitely eye-opening for the process of making the movie for sure.
Yeah, and there's a
Harvest ended up being the title for the Family Guy.
yeah, And there's a lot of like, especially with A New Hope, like it's crazy. I'll kind of wrap it here with this because I think we all say like if you like Star Wars, you should like take the time to watch this because this you learn a lot about this franchise, it makes you appreciate it more. But like to think like with all the chaos they went through, like with the production of A New Hope, with the budget issues, with the having to do casting changes, with Fox wanting to be done by a certain deadline, ILM having to basically invent special effects as the movie went on, like we came this close to never getting this movie on at least like 7 different occasions. And the fact we got it is like a modern miracle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
Look at I feel like that's always true when it comes to like little things. Like this was so close to not happening, and then it did. It ended up being a masterpiece or whatever. But you're right. It was so close to not happening, and then if it didn't, we would not be here today.
yeah, I believe Pete, if I remember correctly in the doc, there were Fox that's like, yeah, but this movie's never coming. Like we kind of was wasting our money here.
Yeah. Can I add one thing before we wrap?
Sure.
I think one thing that really stuck out to me toward the end was George talking about how he always tried to avoid corporations, but then became the head of one.
Yeah.
Almost like Darth Vader avoid like you become the thing you never wanted to become. It was very like he said ironic, but I think it's kind of poetic irony, right? It's like very much what he wrote down on paper kind of happened. And not to say he became like a bad person, but it was funny that he made that correlation. He was aware of it. Like, I literally wanted to do everything independent, did not want to be held down by corporations to becoming a corporation. So I found that very interesting and very, yeah, I guess interesting is the only word. It just stood out to me.
Yeah, it is interesting for sure. And like he made a big deal of how like I want to have creative control and like he made sure he got that merch. Got to the point where like when they went back for Empire, like, what, I'll fund the movie. Like you help me distribute it, but like I want to fund it. Like I have creative control. He doesn't want to deal with the executive note saying, "Oh, like what do you mean you have a Muppet be the main character as the teacher? Why can't we get a person to do this?" Or like are you sure you want to go here with this storyline? Or like why are we doing this reveal like this? Like he wanted to have creative control.
Makes sense.
It does, and I think Nick, you would agree. Like definitely worth the watch if you're a casual fan.
Yeah, I'd say casual, hardcore, and somewhere in the middle. I think this is a good watch. It's like Pete said at the top of the show, though. This is more about movie making than it is Star Wars lore.
Yeah. It's a movie making documentary, and there's a lot of early George too you can talk about where like we go into George's influences. We get George talking about American Graffiti, which is the movie he made before he did Star Wars. And so I think Harrison Ford was in American Graffiti, which is how they knew each other. So like definitely a lot of like backstory of George also and George's influences. I think it's also fun to keep an eye on. You don't get a lot of that now with George. All right, so that's it for this week's episode. And Pete, we're doing one of your ideas next week. You want to let the audience know what we're doing?
Yeah, we're gonna be tier ranking or whatever the most iconic Star Wars ships, but there's a little bit of a twist in there. So I'm excited to go through it. So make sure you're listening in next week.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with the cameo ranking tier list next. So like we'll do another tier list because Pete's all on board with this idea. I'm excited to do it.
Tier lists are a lot of fun. I'm excited to do it.
Yep, and I think you guys are coming on as always. Pete, people want to follow you on social media. Not going to do that.
At Consy29 on Twitter, CONSY29, AP Tyler 308 posted this background on Reddit, so make sure you check him out.
Nick, one more time. If you want to follow on social media, not going to do that.
You can follow at Sky Guys Podcast. That's all over social media, or you can email us at skyguyspod@gmail.com.
And we can also follow me on social media at mphillips331. It's MPHILIPS331. Let's go over the Justin the Suffering podcast. The episode actually just came out before we recorded here. We had a World Cup check-in with Martino Puccio. We checked in with the knockout stages game for the U.S. here. As you're recording right now, they are actually down 1-0 to Belgium in the 12th minute of that game. So a lot of times they come back. We'll see like if they get back there. But Martino had a lot to say about the World Cup goings on here.
Yeah, you should check that out. Martino knows his stuff.
Yeah, Nick, are you watching the World Cup at all?
A little bit.
Yeah. Let's see what happens here. We'll be back next week with Pete's Chips tier list episode. Until then, may the force be with you.